Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's seminar. My name's Billy, and I'll be your moderator for today's web event. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. We will be answering your questions at the end of today's presentation, and we encourage you to type your questions during the presentation. To do so, click on the Q&A tab at the top side of your webinar window, and you'll click the Submit button to send in your questions. To download a copy of today's presentation, please navigate to the Materials tab. And if you need assistance at any time today, you can click on the Help tab to view our support team's contact information. Great, I think we are ready to begin. Today's IHRSA web event titled Marketing Tips to Get the Most Bang for Your Buck at Your Gym. This webinar is being presented by KORR Medical Technologies. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Allison Law, Marketing Director for KORR. Allison, when you are ready, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who is attending. I am really excited about this subject, and I really hope that you find it effective and useful, especially during this pandemic where things are just really crazy, and we kind of need to use every resource that we've got in order to keep our gyms afloat. So this is getting the most from your investments, getting the most bang for your buck. And like I said, I'm very excited about this. I'm very passionate about this. And to explain why I'm passionate about it, I wanted to give a little bit of background about myself and the company that I work with. So my name is Allison Law. Like Billy said, I am the marketing director for KORR. If you haven't heard of KORR, you may have heard of Cardio Coach. That's the main line of product that we promote, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I received my degree in advertising from Brigham Young University, and I previously worked for ad agencies that service clients across the nation. So right now I'm in a very business to business state. Previously I've worked a lot with direct to consumer advertising. And so I've worked with people who sell tires and who are restaurants and who do trade shows. I've kind of done a little bit of everything over the last little while. And so I feel really passionately about that connection that your gym can feel with the people that you want coming to your gym and the people that are already coming to your health club. And a little background on KORR, so the company where I work with right now. Like I said, we sell the units Cardio Coach and MetaCheck, and these units add value to your gym through something called metabolic testing, which the most common forms of metabolic testing is VO2 max testing and RMR testing. VO2 max testing is a fitness test that can give you information about your workouts and training to help you be more effective, and RMR testing tells you how many calories you burn in a day, which is great if you've got like a weight loss program and you need to set caloric standards for the program, or if you want to just track how a client's body is changing as they're working out every day, then that's a great number to track. And gyms will tend to invest in this equipment in order to increase their revenue through upgrading their training packages by including this information, or they upgrade their membership packages to say, hey, if you've got this level of membership, then it'll include this kind of, high quality testing, or they'll charge for like the individual VO2 max test or the individual programs that include, VO2 max testing and things. And the reason why I wanted to give background on KORR is to explain where I'm coming from in this idea of investing in your investments, right? Because when our customers purchase a Cardio Coach, when they purchase a MetaCheck, they are making an investment that they're going to want to see a return on. And so I'm really, really excited to be sharing these tips that are not only going to be useful to people who are investing in treadmills and investing in other kinds of personnel, but it's also going to be something that we'll be able to share with our customers to help them get the most out of their VO2 max testing. So I want you to ask yourself, what are you investing in? Is there something that you've invested in already or that you're thinking about investing in? When I talk about these investments, here's some examples of what I mean. Are you thinking about investing in equipment? Is there some high-tech, awesome treadmill that you're looking at? Are you looking at TRX bands or new kinds of weights, things like that? Are you looking at investing in biometric measurement equipment? I already obviously mentioned VO2 max testing. I kind of have you know, a little bit of an affinity to it, but maybe you're also looking at a body comp machine, or maybe you're looking at both and pairing them together, or other kind of measurement equipment like that. Maybe you're looking at classes or programs. I actually went and did some Googling about what classes are kind of up and coming. And I discovered Mai Tai, which is something I totally want to try sometime. Right now, it looks like it's only big in some of the big cities, but it's due to kind of spread out in the next couple of years. It's like kickboxing with a little bit of Thai in it. Or Bakwa. Bakwa is supposed to be like the next Zumba. So maybe you've discovered one of these new classes and you're looking at buying into it. Or are you looking at investing in some specialized personnel? Maybe you're looking for like a nutritionist or some sort of like high class trainer in order to give your gym a little bit more of like an elite air with the specialized personnel that you have, right? Whatever it is that you're investing in, I'm going to kind of refer back to this as like your investment, right? So when I mention your investment, then think about this thing that you either already have invested in or that you're looking at investing in, and kind of fill in the blank there. So with that being said, I'm going to dive into 7 marketing tips that will ensure a return on your investments. Now, you might be asking, why marketing? Well, I like to say that no one will know that you're awesome until they know you exist. And I'd like to say that I coined that phrase, but I know that I didn't. There's plenty of people that have said similar things like for a long time before me. People are going to continue saying the similar things afterwards. But the truth, the heart of this is the same. Is absolutely, the heart of this is absolutely true, that no one will know that you're awesome until they know you exist. If they don't know you exist, they're never going to know how awesome you are. And that's why marketing is so essential. And this idea is the same for your investment. Like I said, fill in the blank with your new awesome treadmills, or your nutritionist, or your VO2 max testing. No one is going to know that investment is awesome until they know it exists. And that's why in order to see a return on your investment, it is so important to take some time and thought and money, put that into your marketing. Before diving into the actual 7 tips, I wanted to share a couple of core principles of marketing. All of these tips are going to kind of sit on these core principles, and I wanted to make sure I kind of established them and clarified them before we move forward. So the very first core principle of mine, and these aren't like things that you learn in college or anything. This is just me, what I've picked up during my years in the industry. My first principle of marketing is to always market with a purpose. And I'm sure you felt this way with investing, right? With when you're buying new treadmills, or you're looking into a new class or something, you're doing that with a purpose. You're not doing it just willy-nilly. There's kind of this idea of like the field of dreams mentality of, you know, if you build it, they will come. With both marketing and investing, there's kind of this idea of, if I spend it, they will come, right? If I spend it, then my goals will happen. And you need to make sure that you don't do that. You need to make sure that you start out with a purpose. Make sure you start out with an overarching goal in mind, so that as you go, you can see if you're on your way to achieving that goal, and you can know if that money was well spent. Second principle of marketing that I wanted to share is that marketing shouldn't lie. And this sounds a little bit intense, but I want to explain what I mean. Say you've put out an ad for your gym and your gym's new offering, and you've used a stock photo of somebody that's like super marbly fit, but then when the people come, that's not the other people they're seeing around them, or it's not the results that they totally achieve. By marketing shouldn't lie, I mean, marketing should always represent yourself as accurately as possible. It should always represent your offering as accurately as possible. And the reason why I really believe that is because if your customer doesn't feel like they got what was advertised, they're going to feel a little bit burned, and you're going to have some bad marks. And we'll talk a little bit more about this kind of an application with your gyms in a minute, but I wanted to make sure that foundation was established. And then the last principle of marketing that I want to share is marketing is about connecting your brand to the right people. And we'll talk later about who the right people are. But what I want to explain here is that as you're thinking about marketing and you're doing marketing, this is all about making that connection between your gym and this market, right? Your gym and the people that you're wanting to talk to, and starting that conversation so that you can most effectively communicate to them that you have this new offering that they're going to want to be a part of, right? So diving into the tips, tip number 1 is determine your goals. Like we talked about before, this is going back to the market with a purpose, right? So you want to ask yourself questions like, why did you invest in this in the first place? Like, there was a reason that you spent this money on this investment, or that you're setting aside money to pay for, again, the new treadmills, the VO2 max testing, whatever it is. There's a reason why you put that money down. Try to narrow down why that was. Also ask yourself the question of acquisition versus upsell. Are you trying to acquire new customers, or are you trying to upsell the customers that you already have? There's both are effective for different purposes. Once you identify what your purpose is, whether you want to bring in more money by acquiring new people, or you want to bring in more money by banking off of the relationship that you have with your current customer base, that is so important. And truth is, when you're focused on acquiring new customers, you're going to get some upsell. You're going to get some customers who see that ad and they say, oh, I didn't know my gym offered that, and they're going to upsell. If you focus on the upsell, there's a good chance that some of the customers that are having a good experience will bring in referrals, and then it becomes acquisition. So don't be afraid to focus on one. Truth is, you're going to be more effective if you focus on one or the other, and it's going to answer certain marketing questions for you as you go down the line. Also, determine how you want to measure your results. So say your overarching goal is to boost your bottom line. Well, what are the things that you want to measure in the meantime in order to reach that goal? Do you want to increase memberships? Do you want to increase upsells and track the increased income that's attributed to those upsells? Do you want to get more program signups? Like if you've done this Bakwa class and you want to get more Bakwa signups in order to increase that bottom line, then make sure you track that. And truth is, you may be looking at this and saying to yourself, well, I want to do all of that. But the thing is, you need to be focused, because if you try to do it all at once, you're going to underperform in all areas, and you're going to be spread too thin. If you focus yourself on a few key goals, then you're going to be more effective. So that's the first tip, is basically determine how you're going to track this. What's your overall goal? What are your goals leading up to it? And how are you going to track it? The second tip is to finalize your implementation of the thing that you've invested in. If you look on the right, you'll see this big picture. It's an oversimplified flow chart of kind of what happens when you market to your consumers, right? You're going to advertise, they're going to see your advertisement, so they're going to come, and then you're going to provide the product, and then they pay you money. And then if they have a good experience, then when you advertise again, they're going to come again, right? If your product, looking at the marketing cycle kind of in this oversimplified way, you'll notice that if your product is not ready, they'll still feel obligated to pay because you offered a product, but they're probably not going to come again when you advertise again, right? They're not going to come back because they didn't have a great experience. You don't want to lead people to something that's not ready. And in order to be prepared for that, you need to make sure you work out your kinks before people try it out. One great way to do this is to get lots of feedback, to do test groups. I actually got to be part of a test group when I was at a theme park in Orlando last January. People just pulled us out of line for a ride, and they had a clipboard and everything, and they said, hey, we're trying out this new program where you get to see the behind the scenes of the ride, and then we'll let you cut in line. We're like, sweet. So like, our benefit was to cut in line. Their benefit was they got to get feedback on this new program that they were trying out. So you can do the same thing with the thing that you've invested in, right? Like, oh, we've got this new VO2 max testing program. It's usually going to cost $150, but hey, come try it. We'll let you do it for free if we can get your feedback on it. Then they get a free test, so they benefit, but you get the feedback, which is awesome. And then that'll allow you to learn about the kinks and learn about the hard things before you start advertising your product. And then when you advertise, people are going to come back and they're going to have a great experience, and they're going to tell all their friends, and things are going to totally work out. Another good place to get feedback is from your employees and your members. Your employees especially are on the ground level, and they're working with those end users every single day. And so they're going to have great insight as to what's going to be easy, what's going to be difficult, what's working, what's not working. So now that we've established, we've gotten our product ready and we've established our goals, we're going to look at who we're going to talk to. And in order to describe the best way to find those people that you're going to talk to, also known as your market or your audience, I wanted to show you this concept of like the lowest hanging apples, which is just to describe the people who are most likely to use your product. To describe this concept, I like to use the company Apple, not because we're looking at an apple tree and it's ironic, but because iPhones are something that you feel like everybody would want, right? You think when Apple markets an iPhone, that they're going to market to everyone. When truth is, that's not who their ads are aimed at. Their ads are aimed at the people who are most likely to use the product, the people who are going to be the first ones lining up at the door. So the early adopters and the younger people, that's who they would define as like their lowest hanging fruit, or the people most likely to use their product. Now, truth is, with that advertising, they may get an Android user, or they may get, grandma. Maybe there's a grandma out there somewhere who says, oh, like, I want that new iPhone, right? They're still going to get those sales, but that's not who their marketing is going to be directed towards. So marketing is going to be directed towards the people who are most likely to use their product. And you need to do the same thing when you're starting to put together your advertising. You need to figure out who are going to be the first people lining up at your door. So determine as specifically as you can, based on the application of your investment, who is your easiest market and why they are your easiest market. And what I mean by based on the application of your investment, if you have invested in VO2 max testing, for example, there's going to be a couple different ways that you can implement that will affect different audiences differently, right? So for example, let's say you've got a silver sneakers program, and you're using VO2 max testing to determine the numbers that are specific to this older generation that's going to have vastly different numbers. Then you're going to advertise, obviously, to the older generation. Whereas if you're using VO2 max testing in order to bring in more elite athletes, you're going to make sure your advertising goes towards those elite athletes. And yes, maybe there are some older people that also fall into the elite athletes group, but your targeted advertising is going to be to the elite athletes. So once you've decided who those people are, you're going to tailor everything about your marketing, everything in your messaging to that audience. And there's two specific ways that I want to explain that this is going to be, that your ads and your marketing is going to be affected by your audience. The very first one, and probably the most important one, is your ad placement. By ad placement, I just mean like, where's that ad going to show up? So is it going to be on Facebook or Instagram, or is it going to be on a billboard? Is it going to be in the newspaper, right? Like where are you advertising? In order to determine where you're advertising, you need to know who your audience is. So for example, if you're looking at stay-at-home moms because you've got some sort of weight loss program, or you think they'll be the ones that'll be most interested in the bakwa or whatever, then they're the best audience to capture on Facebook and Instagram. So then you'll focus a lot of your ads there. Whereas maybe you're trying to upsell current customers, and so you'll do something within your gym. And then the second thing that this is going to affect is your ads word choice. So like looking at advertising within your gym, you're still going to determine, am I going to get the hardcore athletes? Am I going to get the stay-at-home moms who are losing weight? And that's going to affect how your word choice in your ads, especially if you're doing like an email internally, like to upsell your clients. You want to make sure that if you're talking to a younger crowd, it's going to be like hip, trendy, right? Kind of verbiage. And if it's an older crowd, then maybe it's more serious verbiage, or maybe it's more direct, right? Everything about all of your decisions about your ads are going to be based on who you're advertising to. Now, the next tip is to stay on brand. And this is going to sound a little bit contradictory to that last tip where you're going to do everything for your audience, because right here, I just said do everything for your audience, but now I'm about to say do everything to represent your brand. And truth is, you're going to play around with both, and you're going to find a nice place where those two things are going to marry together very well. So let's start by looking, so to talk about brand and what is brand, because we might have people here that aren't necessarily like super marketing savvy. And so I wanted to just really break down what brand means. So if you look on the right, this is actually a screenshot from an ad that went out really recently, actually. And I want you to think to yourself, if you know who this ad is for, what company put out this video advertisement. If you're thinking to yourself, oh, that's a Target ad, you would be correct. And what I love about the fact that you're probably correct is that there is no logo on here anywhere. There is no products in here that are Target specific to tip you off that it's Target. Target has just like really narrowed down the balance of red and white in their ads so that you can know within an instant of looking at an ad that it's a Target ad. And I think that is the most brilliant thing ever, because branding helps identify who you are before your audience even reads the words. And why this is important for you is you're going to put out this ad in a couple of different places so that your audience sees it 3 or 4 different times, right? If your branding is really good, then by the 3rd or 4th time that they see it, they're going to know within an instant that it's you, and they're going to be better able to absorb that messaging of, oh, we have VO2 max testing. Oh, we have, this awesome new nutritionist to, help with all your food needs or whatever, right? Whatever that message is within the ad, if they know within a split second that it's you, they're going to be better able to absorb the message and connect it with you. Also, if you're advertising internally, if your goal is for upselling, this really determining your brand and being really solid in your branding helps you to be able to bank off that relationship between you and your customer that you already have. So if they recognize that it's you, then there's immediate trust that kicks in. So branding, to break down branding includes colors or color balance, color ratios like we see in this example, fonts, tone of voice. And by tone of voice, I mean, if you were to look at a Target ad versus an Arby's ad versus a Geico ad, either print or a video ad where you're hearing it, they're all going to sound completely different, right? And if you're not sure how they would sound different, I would totally recommend going and look up a couple of those ads and especially print ads, because obviously with video ads, you've got like, we've got the meats, you've got the different voices going on that help, accentuate that brand. But it's also really important to see how it's different in the writing. And so determine what you want your brand to sound like, what you want your gym to look like within your brand, because this branding determines who you are and it gives the viewer a feel for your company. And so as you're making these decisions about what you want your branding to be, then just think through what you want to be. What do you want to feel like? How do you want to connect with people? This is a great time to hire a professional. And the reason that I say that is because there are people who understand art and artistic elements and fonts and colors and things like that a little better than you might. And so it might be worth hiring somebody, for a one-off project, or hiring, if you need to save a little bit of money, hire an intern that does marketing, that's learned about all of this in school and has passion for it, right? And while you have that professional, I would strongly recommend making a style guide or a standards manual, because what that does is it puts your brand in writing so that after this project, if you hire somebody else or the intern moves on or you decide to try to do something on your own, then your brand is laid out, the fonts that are needed and the colors that are needed, right? And the color balance and the tone of voice, that all is going to be put in writing so that you or somebody else can continue to follow it and continue that continuity with your gym in the future. Tip number 6 is to think outside the box. By that, I mean, think of things that are maybe not necessarily traditional. The true definition of traditional advertising is print ads and TV ads. But I would also, consider traditional advertising like the first things you think of, right? Like you say, oh, well, we need to put out a social media ad and we need to do this, right? When I say think outside the box, let yourself think a little bit longer about where these ads could go. And this is going to be answered by who you're trying to reach. So the example that I've got here on the right side, this is a picture of actually a morning talk show. And there's a guy on the right side whose face is hidden, which I kind of did on purpose so that I wouldn't get in trouble. He was my client, and he knew that his audience that he was trying to reach to promote his product, his audience listened to this talk show every morning. And so he knew that if he paid a little bit of money to get onto this talk show, that he could not only be in front of his audience, but he'd have a little bit of time to explain and detail his product and his offering that he was trying to get out there about this event that was happening during this certain period of time. And then he also had the radio hosts that were bouncing questions off of him and that, you know, kept it really light and kept it kind of in the style of that his audience liked to hear every morning. So think of things like that, radio shows. And there's also like TV morning shows, you know, where you've got that, you know, those couple of gals on the couch that are chatting about stuff or cooking up meals. Like those, you can actually often pay money in order to get on those shows and to talk about your stuff. Or you can invite them or put out a press release to a news place, like, come do a news story over at my gym so that we can show how awesome this thing is, especially if it's kind of new. Or like VO2 max testing. Again, I'm very passionate and my knowledge base is in VO2 max testing, so that's why I keep coming back to it. But you've got like this big blue mask and it's got a lot of visuals to it that could look cool on the news, on like a news story. You could advertise or sponsor in a race. If your core base that you're trying to reach is that those hardcore athletes that are weekend warriors and racing really regularly, then get in these races that they're already in, sponsor within a race, or find a way to advertise within a race, or find a way to gain an email list from this race and then send them a mass email. You can share testimonials from your test group. You can do a contest with your current customers. You could do referral programs. Truth is, the possibilities are endless. It's all going to be determined by who your audience is. So like I said, if your audience is these hardcore triathletes, you get into the race. All the question of outside the box is going to be determined by who these people are and where they're at. And if you know where they're at, you're going to know how to get in front of them. The last tip I wanted to share is numbers, numbers, numbers. Figuring out how you will measure success. So you're going to take a baseline where it is that you want to measure. And we talked before about, measuring memberships and things like that. You want to make sure you take a baseline measurement before you start, especially if you're working off the books, your goals are off the books. Make sure you know where you started so you can know where you go from there. And you want to measure regularly. And then if the numbers aren't working out, you don't want to give up right away. You want to use the information to make changes. If you look on the right, the example that I have here is a Facebook advertisement. Now I want to put out a little bit of advice about social media advertising, especially if you're new to the marketing world or you're kind of a marketing novice. First of all, it's important to know that Facebook bought out Instagram. So when you advertise on Facebook, you will also be advertising on Instagram with the same dollars. So that can be a really effective spend if that's where your audience is. Second of all, if you're a marketing novice, there's two ways to do Facebook advertising. One is really complicated and it gives you lots of awesome information. But if you don't even know what you would do with the information, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your company page. You're going to click the little button that says create an ad. And then it's very like push here dummy kind of step-by-step. It guides you through the advertising, guides you through how to pay for it. And it's kind of really obvious. And what I have on the right here is the results that you would get from that really simplified Facebook advertising. So obviously it's going to tell you how much you spent so that what you're tracking is your cost effectiveness, then you've got that number right there for how cost effective your reach was or how cost effective your link clicks were or how, whether or not people are clicking through on your ads. But these numbers will not mean anything if you don't have goals. Like we talked about the goals in the very beginning, right? So if my goal is I've got a new gym and I just want to make people aware, awareness is my only goal. I want to make them aware that this new product exists. Then the number I'll look at is reach. And then if the reach, again, if the numbers aren't turning out like I want to, if the reach isn't quite what I want it to be, then I know to change things, change how much money I'm putting into it, or change some of the detailing on the targeting that Facebook guides you through to make sure that I'm getting a good reach. Or say I want to take people with this ad to a landing page, and I want them to click through to a landing page and fill out a form in order to sign up for a class or to sign up for a VO2 max test. If you see that the link clicks are really high, but people aren't filling out the form on the landing page, then you know that there's something wrong with the landing page and you can make adjustments there. Or if you've got a really high reach and people aren't clicking on the link, then you know to make adjustments to your ad in order to try to get more click-throughs. So just get as many numbers as you can. But again, going back to that first tip, make sure as you're gathering these numbers that they're focused on your goals, your large goals and your step-by-step goals, in order to make sure that all your spending within marketing is effective. I wanted to bring up a little case study of somebody who used a lot of these tips in order to see success with his business. His name is Chris Navin, and he worked for fitness formula clubs. And he invested in VO2 max testing in order to improve his training program. He targeted endurance athletes. So like we talked about, you find that people are going to be the first in the door, the people who are going to be the most likely to buy into this thing that you've invested in. And so he does training for endurance athletes. And so he targeted these endurance athletes. And he recognized that in the Chicago area where his business was based, these athletes are constantly on the go. And so in order to get in front of them, he purchased a bus wrap. So behind, as you can see back here, this is an example of a bus wrap. It's not the actual bus wrap because it was VO2 max, not skiing. But here on the back, he had kind of that iconic blue mask that was staring you right down to invite people to come get a VO2 max test and to come do training with him. He ended up bringing in $114,000 from testing these endurance athletes. Now, I would say that that's an amazing return on investment. And that was in 1 year. He brought in $114,000 in 1 year from that investment. That's a huge return on investment. So I want to wrap up by talking about how do marketing tips lead to ROI? You might be somebody who's sitting through this thinking, this should have been about implementation, right? This should have been about how to make it fit in my gym. And there's lots of things that we could talk about there, but why talk about marketing tips leading to a return on investment? Well, let's look at this flow again. So people are going to learn about your program, your equipment, your testing, your new people, whatever it is. People are going to learn about that. People are going to buy into that. You're going to get more money. That's exactly how a return on investment works, right? Is they're going to give you money for the thing you've invested in. But the thing is, if nobody ever learns about this investment, and if nobody learns about this program or this addition to your gym, they're not going to be able to buy into it because they never learned about it. And they're not going to be able to give you money because they didn't buy into it because they never learned about it. And that's why marketing is so, so essential for gaining that return on your investment, because no one will know that your investment is awesome until they know it exists. So I went through that a lot quicker than I meant to. So we've got tons of time for questions. Go ahead and take some time to put some questions into the Q&A poll if you need to. I've also got my email here, alaw@korr.com. If you want additional marketing tips, if you need materials, more ideas, or you just want to reach out to me directly, that's my email there. And so I'll toss it back to Billy for the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison. We do have plenty of time, like you said. If you have a question for her, please put it in the Q&A there. and we'll take your questions as they pop in here. So we do have some questions that have already come in. So we'll start with the first question, and it asks, do you think it's worth paying for social media ads or just posting on our social media pages?
So that question, that comes back to what we talked about before with defining our audience, right? So if you're, I'm a big fan of social media ads in general, just because they're really cheap, but you need to define, again, who your audience is before you put that money into social media advertising, right? So if, like I said, if you're going for stay-at-home moms or for middle-aged women, like that's a great audience to get through Facebook and Instagram. And I would put money into social media. Another place that social media can be effective is with Facebook. You can target people who like your page and their friends. Like there's a little button that you can click for that. So if you're marketing internally, I would definitely like keep that as an option. I would definitely pay. Yeah, like posting on your page is only going to get the people that are following your page, and then you don't even know like whether or not it came up, because sometimes people get pushed with so much content. The short answer is, if your audience is on social media, yes, I would definitely put money into social media.
Awesome, thanks. Another question asks, you mentioned the new fitness program, Bakwa, a few times. What was the other new format you had mentioned?
Oh, Muay Thai. It's MUAI. I can maybe go back to it so you can get the spelling. But and that I just found through Google. So if it turns out to be nothing, I'm sorry that I threw out the name. But MUAYTHIE, and it's like kickboxing, but from what I read, again, from what I Googled, it's like kickboxing, but with like a Thai element to it. It looked really cool.
Awesome. Our next question asks, we are using the cardio coach for RMR and VO2 testing and are looking to add 3D body scanning to our facility. The 3D scan data includes algorithm-based RMR reports. How do you suggest presenting potentially conflicting numbers to clients?
That's a good question. So one thing to note about KORR's measurement of RMR testing is that it is extremely, extremely accurate, and it's the numbers that you're getting in the moment, right? It comes, the information that is used within KORR in order to get that number, there's a direct correlation between the calories that you burn and the oxygen that you're breathing out, right? And again, I'm in marketing, so I can't tell you like all the science behind that, but I'm pretty sure, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, I'm pretty sure most 3D scanners use estimates, like predefined predicted numbers. They use predicted. So there's like a formula that you can use to determine what your RMR is, like based on your age, height, weight, whatever. And there's a lot of 3D scanners that use that predicted formula. And so I would maybe explain if there's a difference in those numbers. I would probably explain to your clients, if you've got those numbers side by side, I'd probably explain to your clients like, okay, so this is what you're predicted to be at, and here's your actual measurement. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Allison. Our next question asks, do you believe periodically sending digital newsletters is still a good strategy?
Yes, if you do it right. And here's what I mean. I'm on a couple of different newsletters, and mostly for organizations such as URSA. And actually, I want to give a call out to URSA, because like URSA's digital newsletters are very clean and concise. And so I make sure that you're not littering your newsletters with tons of information. Make sure that they're really simple and easy to read through. Also, coming back to like knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to. This same principle applies when you're looking at these digital newsletters, right? So if your audience, if you know your audience is somebody who like would only benefit or would only appreciate getting something from your company once a month, then keep it at once a month. If it's once a quarter, then it's once a quarter. And if you know them, then you'll know the information to include in that newsletter. But if you have people that are regularly reading that newsletter, that can be a great way, number one, to be able to promote things basically for free, for no additional budget by putting it in the newsletter. Also, it gives you an email list. So if you decided you want to do an email blast, you can do that.
Our next question asks, can you give some additional ideas for marketing to current members?
Absolutely. So marketing, so looking at marketing in-house. And so if you're looking at upselling versus acquisition, I think that's what that means. Some additional ideas of things you could do, as you're kind of looking to stretch yourself. I mentioned an email blast. I'm a fan of email blasts, but a totally free way to do an email blast if you already have the emails is through a company called MailChimp. They're super easy and the emails come out really slick, really nice. So I highly recommend them. If you have cell phone numbers, there's a lot of companies that you can put a little money into them and you can send mass text, and that gets right in front of your audience. And that, again, I would go back to the newsletter question and I'd say, like, you don't want to spam people. I would only do that like once to like promote something. Another idea that we've given a lot of our customers is to create like a contest with a cool prize, right? So and you, of course, you'll do different kinds of advertising for this, but like if you let's take VO2 Max or let's take the RMR VO2 Max and body comp that came from the previous question, right? You could totally create a program there that's about like fat loss, not weight loss, right? Where you're using the 3D scan in order to watch the fat go down, but you're using the information from your RMR test in order to know what calories to eat to. You're using the VO2 Max test in order to like determine heart rate zones and fat burning zones. And so then you work on that fat burning with your trainer, and you're measuring periodically, and you end up, and then you can say, the person who loses the largest percentage of fat gets to, have whatever big prize. And so setting up a contest like that where the thing you've invested in is at the heart of it, gives you options for promoting it, right? Because then, go back to like the news story idea, like feature this person who won, or like the top couple people on the news, and like show a picture of them doing a VO2 Max test and measuring on the 3D scanner, right? You can do an email blast. You can have a banner pull up. You can put things in that newsletter, right? And it creates, if you create a contest or you create a program like that, that's very like public, that creates kind of a conversation piece that you can incorporate into your marketing.
Another question asks, do you recommend spending a lot on photographers for your ads?
That's a really interesting question. So I'm going to say it depends. If you're doing product shots, there are people who are like specialized in product shots, and your product can look really lame or wonky if you cheap out on that. So I would spend more money if you've got a shot of like a product. But if you're shooting people, I would say just work within the budget that you've got. You'll probably be able to determine that yourself within your budget. If you need to save money but you still want a professional look, I might look for people who are doing, for a little less money, like portraits and wedding photography and things like that, and maybe try that instead of somebody who does like the sports photography. Say to these people, hey, could you do a one-off shoot for us, and let them, and just see how that turns out. I ended up using my wedding videographer for a video, and ended up getting like a really nice, because he knows how to shoot people. So I ended up getting some really nice footage from that for something. And so there are ways that you can kind of like cheap out on that if you need to, but just try to do it very carefully and look at portfolios first so that the end result doesn't look cheap, if that makes sense.
That sounds great. I don't see any other questions here. So Allison, any last minute comments or anything like that before we wrap up here?
Good luck. Good luck to everybody who's looking to see a return on their investments. I wish you well, and I wish you so much success out of this.
Well, excellent. Unfortunately, we have run out of time and run out of questions here. So would like to thank you all for joining us today and for your great questions. Again, a big thank you to Allison for sharing her expertise with us today. In just a moment, you will see a survey pop up on your screen. We do appreciate any feedback that you can provide to help us improve our future web events. And we all hope you have a great rest of your day.